No, crates can be a useful tool for managing a dog at home because dogs are denning creatures, aren't you, girlfriend? But they're not den living, are they? They're denning. Just like their feral cousins that live in the wild, dogs need to have a choice of whether they want to stay in their den or leave, because that's innate to how they're genetically programmed right here in their little cabeza. So you have needs too, don't you? You need to have a house that doesn't get dog urine, dog stool, have your stuff chewed up. You need to protect your place, don't you? And what are you going to do with a dog who has all those behaviors? Well, let's talk about that and figure that out, because crates can be a good tool, but let's not overdo it. By the way, in case we haven't met, I'm veterinarian Dr. Jeff Nickel. And if you've had this kind of a problem, please put it right there in the comment line. Let me know you're here, tell me where you're from, and if you've had dogs who've damaged your house, who have house soiled, or you've had some other reason to crate them, or you just have a question about crating your dog, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but let's put it in a perspective and make sure that we do it humanely and that we really take into account the dog's overall behavior, because that's really what matters. Everybody's well-being, yours and your dog's, right? So, just to tell you a little bit about myself, in case we haven't met, I'm residency trained in veterinary behavior medicine. I'm a veterinary behaviorist with many years of experience in general practice, and after all this time, there's hardly anything I haven't seen. So, any questions come up, I don't care what it is about dogs and cats, behavioral, other physical problems, lay it on me, I'm ready for you. Try to stump me, okay? Here's Tony, by the way. He's one of our kitties. Tony will be 15 years old in November, and Gaston is the fuzzy white guy who's on the floor right now, but he shows up because these guys have freedom of movement around the house. And here's Miss America, the family border collie, and she just turned 13, and she's doing very nicely as well. So here's the thing I want to share with you tonight, and I get some of my ideas for doing these Facebook Lives, not just from the cases I see in the exam room of people who bring in pets with serious behavior disorders, but folks also send me questions on my Facebook page, and I publish them in the Albuquerque Journal every Friday morning, which, by the way, you can get in your email box every Tuesday morning. All you have to do is subscribe to my website, drjeffnickel.com, drjeff, There's no charge to subscribe, and when you do, I'll send you every Tuesday morning my column with an answer from the week before, and also my Facebook Live. So if you don't have a chance to tune in, it can just show up in your email inbox. So here's the question. I have a 2-year-old Westie who is so hard to house train, and we'll talk about breeds that are hard to house train. We keep her in a cage during the day, take her out before we leave in the mornings, and at night before we go to bed. But most of the time she messes in her cage. She has wet the area rugs I have in the living room. I have heard that Westies just can't hold it as long as other dogs. I can see how that kind of idea becomes sort of thought to be true because, well, it's repeated often, and things that are repeated often are thought to be true. But the truth is that a Westie can be house trained. There's no question about it. But this breed, these small terriers, they are documented by statistical research to be a little bit harder to train. And in a broad sense, small breeds are harder to train. We're not sure exactly why, but we do know that it's a problem. It's more than just clinical experience. But they can be tough. Westies are a breed, they're terriers, and they are intended to work without having to check in with their leader. Of course, they're intended to kill small rodents, and if they are chasing them, their job isn't to look to their leader and go, well, shall I break this rat's neck? And what about this one over here? You know, they're unlike a herding dog, like a border collie, like Miss America, and they check in with their leader for instructions. And so their brains are programmed differently. So they are a challenge, but it isn't that their bladders are small or they simply can't tolerate being, holding their urine for several hours. They really ought to be able to. And what really concerns me about this 2-year-old Westie in this question is that this dog is soiling its den, its crate. Now, it's possible that the den it's maybe not really a den at all, because Dogs, when they sneak into a snug little place, whether it's your dog who might be afraid of thunderstorms or fireworks and sneaks into the closet underneath the clothing, crawls under the furniture, well, it's got a low roof type thing, and if it's got sides where the dog feels protected, doesn't feel that anybody can see it necessarily, that's sort of what qualifies it for a den. And many people, when they get a crate for a dog, they're getting wire crates, which aren't necessarily a bad thing, but for the dog to feel as though they're in a secure den, which is part of how they're programmed, they need to have it covered. And not just the top, but the sides and the back of it. Only the front of it should be left open. And some dogs do better when you use a towel or a blanket. I don't want to trap a lot of heat in there. But you know, a flap on the front of it so the dog can see out the bottom a few inches. And many dogs feel more secure and comfortable in there. So let's continue. I'll share my answer that I wrote to this person. Oh, believe me, your dog is as miserable as you are. She is also confused. The first priority is to rule out bladder infection or kidney disease. And dogs who have kidney disease or diabetes, or in some cases, Cushing's disease. Carolyn, I have somebody who's visited. Oh, Cindy is here. Hey, Cindy. Excellent. I'm so pleased you're here. Thank you for coming again. There can be physical problems that can cause a dog to drink and pass greater volumes of urine than normal. And so for that reason, it could be possible that this Westie is not holding its urine because it's got so darn much of it that it really can't. So that's a possibility. And whenever we see a behavior case, you know, the specialty that I did my residency training in, thank you, Carolyn, is it's all about this organ right up here, the brain. Hello, Tony T. And it's considered the most complex organ in the body, but it's influenced by behavioral or by malfunctions or disorders in other organ systems. And so the bladder and the kidneys are a pretty important place to start. So this dog needs to have, well, here's my answer. This dog, she needs a blood profile, a urinalysis, and a urine culture. Sometimes we can actually have bacterial infection in a bladder and see very few bacteria on our urinalysis when we check the sediment under the microscope. So in a case like this, I'd send it off to the lab for a culture, and let's make sure that it's sterile as it should be, because normal urine, there's no bacteria in it at all. It's a sterile fluid. So let's assume that everything comes back normal. Abdominal x-rays, I pointed out, may also be important to find out if there's a birth defect causing her to involuntarily leak. Dogs can have what's called a patent urachus or a ectopic ureter. And these are, I can go into the details of it, but these deformities, if you will, in a dog who appears completely normal in all other respects physically, these dogs will leak urine because the urine is bypassing the bladder and the bladder sphincter. And so there are people think that this dog isn't house trained, or there are people who make real mistaken assumptions like, oh, the dog's trying to spite me or punish me, and believe me, that does not happen. But beyond infections, kidney disorders, liver problems, adrenal gland problems, a variety of things, diabetes that can cause excessive urine production, and bladder infections, there are also birth defects that are particularly found in younger dogs. There's also the risk of bladder stones that can make the bladder wall irritated, and they have a really hard time holding their urine. And we have somebody else who's come on board here, and somehow, there we go. Let me see who else is visiting. Well, it's not telling me, Carolyn. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it'll come up now. Nope. It's not working for me here. I don't know why the heck not, but I've got somebody else who's dropped in, and I'd love to say hello, but I can't find him. Thank you for that. So anyway, we're going to rule out all the physical problems, and it's a general practicing veterinarian's job to figure that out, although very often when they come into my exam room for behavior work, thank you, especially because of all my training and experience in general practice, I'm looking for that stuff. Martha, hey, wonderful. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted that you're here. And I have a couple of cats here that are very interested in these little indoor hunting feeders. Gentlemen, I hope everybody's well behaved. Okay, so using a crate is a great idea because dogs have an instinct not to soil their dens. But if this girl is afraid of being left in there for hours on end, she may have given up her dignity to avoid the pain of a full bladder. Thank you for the hearts, by the way. I know that I'm doing something helpful. Because this dog may be in there for way too long. In fact, it really sounds like it. If they're letting her outside to use the bathroom in the yard, and they put her in the crate before they leave for work, and then they let her out at night to go outside, and then she goes back in it at night, this dog may be living a barren existence. She's not only incarcerated all day long, but she's also unable to engage in canine-specific activities like play, like digging, stuff that that dogs need to do, but and we need to give them opportunities to do it. Foraging, dogs like this need to do something that simulates herding behavior, and this poor dog, this Westie, isn't getting to do any of that. That is a big welfare problem. This dog's well-being is suffering. So, what's more, if her early house training as a puppy wasn't totally consistent, she may also be confused. Calling her a hard-headed terrier would be a slur on her breed, not to mention politically incorrect. Westies have feelings, of course. I also pointed out that you don't want to hound this terrier for having a drippy faucet just in case there's a physical problem. After we figure out the rest of it out, we'll deal with the behavior. So I suggest they go back to basics. And until this baby is fully house trained, she'll need access to the outside at least every 3 hours, day and night. So I suggested they go to my website, drjeffnickel.com, for a research-based structure called one-day house training. Believe it, in new puppies, it works in 1 day. For a dog like this, assuming that this is entirely related to her being not fully house trained, they can repeat the one-day method 4 consecutive days, followed by 2 weeks of close tether training, which means that the dog is tethered by a leash to the belt of somebody in the family all day long and allowed outside every few hours for an opportunity to earn the great reward. The reason that dogs learn in the wild or at home to urinate outside around the perimeter of their territory is the great reinforcer that is earned, that is part of their innate behavior, and that is a walk-off property. That's the great reward. Not a party, not a snack, although you can do that stuff. What the dog really needs to learn to do the right thing outside is, as soon as they go outside, you take them on leash for a brief, it doesn't have to be a long walk, but they need to be able to go out and sniff and investigate where other dogs have been. That's what's necessary for this species. It's not like toilet training a child. We've been to these very often. You'll know that I often remind people that we love them like little children in furry suits, but they're members of a different species. And we've got to acknowledge that. And that's part of the empathy that we feel for pets, isn't it? I mean, we know that if we're empathic toward another person, we're walking a mile in the other person's moccasins, trying to understand their feelings and their needs by trying to put ourselves in their place or in their shoes. And, people who are different than, from my perspective, than I am, they can sometimes seem very different. Well, our dogs are very, very different, and our cats are even a lot more different than that, because socially they don't have as much in common with us as this species. They make great pets, but they're a different creature. So with dogs, they have different rewards in their little brains for doing the right thing outside. So this little Westie, if everything is otherwise healthy on her, she needs to be house trained well so she doesn't have to stay in the crate all day. The one-day house training method is on my website. The 2 weeks of close tether training is not, although I can send that to people if they're interested. And then the last phase is what we call the stealth phase, where you actually drop that little tether that you're using to connect your dog to you for a couple of weeks. And you let that dog sneak off, and then you in your sneakiest sneakers or your ballet slippers, you stalk your dog and try to see if you can bust them in the act. I mean, at some point they have to be put to the test. And sometimes we go back to one-day house training, go back to close tether training. But this little Westie needs the love and the caring to understand what's expected, rather than being incarcerated for not knowing what to do and having essentially no life at all. I mean, she's in solitary confinement. And one of the things that we see with pets who are crated way too much or for the wrong reasons has to do with separation anxiety. People say, geez, as a puppy we had to crate her because, she was running all over the place, and maybe we got her house trained, but she was chewing stuff up, jumping at the door, chewing the furniture, getting into the trash can, so we had to crate her. And many people will strongly advise you to crate train a puppy. Or if you get an adult dog, from a rescue group or a shelter, well, crate train that dog. I would not argue with that for a minute. For a dog to understand that this is the place where I can find security and safety and a break, by all means. That is one component of many things that are essential to being a dog. You'll often see me mentioning like food dispensing toys. This is one of many. This is called the twist and treat, and you can put dry food or canned in it. I like to put canned food in this thing and then screw it back together. Yeah, girlfriend, that smells pretty good, doesn't it? And then you stick it in a Ziploc and freeze it overnight. Take it out of the bag, and you can give it to your dog in the morning or hide it under the furniture, different place each day, or in a digging box outside, especially if you have a dog door, so your dog has more choices. When we think about it, we take a dog into our life, and we confine them with a fence. They live in a building, a house with walls. When they go outside our yard, we take them on a leash. None of those things are natural for dogs. They don't have an innate understanding of any of that stuff. Well-adjusted dogs adapt, but those who have anxiety disorders, and they're very common, can really struggle with that. And so when people overdo the crating thing and keep their dogs confined just to prevent them from damaging their house, I get it. I understand. Nobody wants their stuff wrecked. But we're not addressing the real problem. And that's really what is necessary. So inappropriate or inadequate or incomplete house training is certainly one possibility. Physical problems like we discussed with this Westie, another possibility. Are we behaving ourselves, gentlemen? Thank you. Separation anxiety, it's a huge underdiagnosed problem. It's underdiagnosed by veterinarians because pet parents, they don't necessarily recognize that's what's going on. They say, well, this dog was a kind of a little destructo puppy, and so we just crate trained her, and now she does this. She stays in the crate. And I've encountered people who've been crating their dog for years, and I go, maybe we don't need to. Maybe we can let him out. And especially if we install a dog door, to give him the choice of being able to go outside or not. Cindy, my foster dogs from the shelter had separation anxiety. It is remarkably common, Cindy. And I'll tell you, it's not an all or nothing thing. It isn't that a dog has separation anxiety, or they don't. A lot of them don't. This dog does not. We're fortunate. But we found that many of them have a genetic tendency for this kind of anxiety, and that when they are loose in the house, you may come home and your neighbors haven't complained about barking and crying. You haven't seen any scratches on your door. The woodwork around the door isn't chewed. There isn't any house soiling. You arrive home and the dog seems calm. They don't have big old strings of slobber hanging off their chops because they're so freaked out. And you think, this dog's fine, well adjusted. Maybe not quite as well as you think. So what I encourage people to do is to invest $99, go to NestCam, NESTCam.com, and you can get a video surveillance system with 2 cameras and an app that you can link to your smartphone. So you can aim one camera toward the interior side of your door and aim the other camera some other place where your dog might be while you're gone, and then get in the car and drive away. And you have to leave because the dog needs to really believe you're gone, and you should do all your normal preparations to leave. Brush your teeth, put on your work clothes, grab your purse, your car keys, whatever it is, and then leave. And you think, my goodness, the dog can do a lot of damage. Well, right, but they almost all, if they're going to do some damage, do it starting within 20 minutes after their person's departure. And if you have the smartphone app, you can drive down the block and watch what's going on. And even if you don't see anything getting damaged, here's the question. Is your dog behaving differently than he would while you're at home? Is there pacing? Is there nervous panting? Now, this dog is panting because we live in the desert, and it's kind of warm here, but panting can be essential to dissipating heat. But nervous panting, including pacing, dogs who scan, look back and forth, and their ears are laid back, and they've got that nervous, anxious demeanor about them that you don't notice when you're home. And when you see different behavior when you're gone, you very likely have a dog who may not have full-on separation anxiety. Thank you, Carolyn. She just turned the fan on Miss America to cool her off. You're such a good girl. If the dog behaves the same while you're gone as when you're at home, well, I think you're fine. But, with so many people working from home right now, well, at some point, we're going to get past this pandemic to the extent that people are going to go back to the office. And dogs who might have been marginally under control with their separation anxiety before the pandemic came. And then there are people who are at home almost all the time now, and these dogs thinking, oh my goodness, I've died and gone to heaven, right? My folks are never going to leave, right? And then you do. Well, these dogs can really destabilize. And so let's find out now if you have that kind of problem. So if you've had a dog you've been crating, and it seems peaceful, then let it out of the crate. On the other, see what happens. And, videotape your dog in your absence. If you don't want to invest in a little surveillance system, you can take your smartphone, prop it up against a couple of books, or get one of these inexpensive $20 smartphone tripods, and you can sit this thing on a counter or on a table, aim it at the inside of your exit door, see what's going on. Now, in some cases, it's pretty obvious. If you've been crating your dog and you come home and the crate and the dog are in a different part of the room, that means that dog's been thrashing around in there so much that the crate has moved. That's a big problem. You don't need a video to tell you what's going on there. Or the dog who has tried so frantically to escape that they've broken their nails, they've cut their lips, and even fractured their canine teeth. These big fangs that our dogs have, these canine teeth, you think, wow, that's a big stout tooth. It has only one root, but the root is actually bigger than the tooth that's exposed below the gum line. And there are dogs who fracture off their canine tooth at the gum line because they are trying desperately to get out of this crate. Well, geez, we can't allow that kind of misery to continue. So let's find this out. Now, there's lots of treatments for separation anxiety, and I've done Facebook Lives on those before. And by the way, if you want to see more video on that, go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dr. Jeff Nickel, Nichol, no S on my name, and you'll see every darn video I've ever done, and you can search it and look for separation anxiety or damage to the home. Sometimes I give them other titles. But here's a treatment I want to just share with you, and I know I've brought this up before. I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see this. And this is called the Calmer Canine. And it is not a medication, although it can be used safely with a medication. This is what the box looks like. And it is a pulse electromagnetic field device. And you're picking up that cat food that Tony dropped. Miss America, I'm going to sit back. Now, Miss America, turn around here. She's a scavenger. Now, turn around there, girlfriend. Good. Now, you've already had your dinner. My goodness gracious. Yes, we may never get fed again. That's the problem with dogs, is they're all scavengers because they live a life of scarcity. Even if you have enough money to buy dog food, they're like that. So, so Tony dumped the little indoor hunting feeder behind my chair, and there's cat food, and that's pretty tasty stuff. Okay, so anyway, here's what the box looks like. And she's wearing this little outfit here that you can see. Shucks, Carolyn. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it'll come back. Excuse me now, gentlemen. So, Miss America, show people your little outfit. Here, you stand. That's good. And so she's wearing this little thing right here around her middle, and it kind of blends in with her hair color. Then this thing right here, it connects to it. It's this little vest, okay? And then what you get is this little loop here. It looks like a halo. And you simply, because it has Velcro on it, you stick it to the thing, and it sits on her head, or just behind her head like this. And you turn this on, and it runs for 15 minutes. It shuts itself off, and you do it twice a day for 4 to 6 weeks. And it actually adjusts the neurochemistry inside the microglia, these little nerve cells in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. And these dogs, 80% of them, have done much better, and very often with significant problems with separation anxiety. Some of these dogs are really bad. I use the Common K9. People just do this at home. You can have your dog sitting with you while you have breakfast in the morning, or camped out next to you while you're watching TV in the evening. They can walk around with it. They don't play hard or it'll fall off, but they don't have to remain perfectly still. And again, they feel nothing. It's totally safe. And this is the only medical device I know, or treatment of any kind that I'm aware of, that is guaranteed. CZ Animal Health makes these, and if it doesn't work, you send it back, they'll refund your money. And they're even on sale right now. Anyway, enough of the sales pitch. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful treatment tool. And the biggest problem I have with separation anxiety is how many dogs are struggling with this, and will be struggling significantly when their people go back to work, and nobody really knows. So shoot some video and find out if you've got a problem like that. They can learn any time in their lives that we are safe, that they can trust us. And dogs get intimidated by their people. And it's quite rare that somebody tries to do it intentionally. People do it inadvertently because they have an assumption, they have something that they learned on the internet or some other person told them about what to do about a problem. And so often these well-meaning advice that people get are treatments for the behavioral symptom. It's like, gee, if I had a dog who was drinking and urinating excessively, would I treat that by picking up the water? No, I'd find out what the underlying cause was. I'm trained in internal medicine. I know that sometimes you have to treat symptoms. That's important. Reduce pain, for example, mighty important. But understand the cause and do something about the problem long term. That's really the essence of good medicine. And the same is true with behavior disorders. So shoot some video. Find out what the heck's going on. Thank you for those hearts. Let me see if there's somebody else had a question. I'm definitely getting that camera. I agree with that, Cindy. And the thing is, who couldn't use a surveillance camera? Find out what the heck's going on. So, I think that what I really like to encourage people to do is build a foundation of trust and freedom with your pet, so that they're motivated to work with you, because they know when we're looking out for their well-being. It isn't just other people who can tell. When all we want to do is get our needs met, then they can be kind of obstinate, just like people. But if it's clear to your dog that there's something in it for them, just like everybody in your life, whether it's your spouse, other people in your family, your friends, people in the workplace, if it's clear to them that you're interested in what's going to make their life better, well, if you want a friend, you be a friend. And the same thing with man's and women's best friend. But you've got to get answers. And, they don't speak a human language, do they? I figured that out a long time ago in veterinary practice, that I can't ask for those answers. I rely heavily on my pet parents, on my client, the people who've brought the pet to me, to make observations. And we take a lot of history, much more than physicians have to, because boy, we got to figure this out somehow. We do a lot of lab work, but in a behavior case, hey, a video can make a huge difference. So thank you for spending some time with me, and I'm just delighted with the questions that people give me, and that you can send to me on my Facebook page. And if you've got friends, put them in the comment line, send this to them, and they can, their pets can benefit from this. And by all means, if you haven't subscribed to my website, well, do that. Because when you do, go to my homepage, drjeffnickel.com. At the bottom, if you put in your email address, I will send you my at-home pet first aid and CPR guide, and it's free. And it's very simple bullet points. This is what you look for. This is what the problems present as. This is what you do at home. And this is what you do on your way to the veterinary clinic in many cases, things like heat stroke. So, so subscribe, for goodness sake, and I'll send that to you every week. And thank you again for caring for your pets and for being here and sharing some time with me. Miss America thanks you, and we'll take this little halo off, because you're a little angel of a girl anyway. So have a great weekend, and don't forget to wear your mask.